And hey, good evening, everybody. It is a special edition of the Beaufort County House of Cards. I'm Mike Covert, your host. Glad to be here. It's Saturday night for this special edition of, like I said, of the House of Cards. I want to welcome everybody. If you are joining in, whether it be on Facebook, make sure you like us. If you're on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to the page and ask a friend or two to subscribe along. That way, you'll get notifications if you ring the little bell, and you'll know more about it. So, why are we having um, a special edition? Because some things have happened. Well, first of all, let's do this. You may have noticed that intro music was a little different. That's not normal. That was straight out of a hockey match there with the foghorn and whatever that music is. Um, we've got to. Well, I'll tell you what. Just listen to this. Here's what that's all about. Wrong one. Denise Wrestler, Exit Hilton Head Realty presents win 4 professional hockey tickets to see the Savannah Ghost Pirates take on the Orlando Solar Bears January 27th at the In-Market Arena in Savannah, Georgia. Enter by going to BigPatriotRadio.com, click on the home page and enter from there. Drawing will be held on or by January 25th. Call Denise Wrestler, Exit Realty, 412-979-6297. That's 412-979-6297. Get your entry in now by going to www.bigpatriotradio.com. That's right. That's right. So go to that radio station, bigpatriotradio.com, sign up for those tickets. They're going to be given away on or around the 25th of January for the 27th game against Savannah and the Orlando Solar Bears. I don't know how they got that, but anyway, whatever. Um, and that's by Denise Wrestler, Exit Realty. So, what is tonight all about? Well, tonight's show is because of some, breaking news that it's been festering in the background. But specifically two outlets, Corey Allen over at the Overton Report, then to a different extent, some would say possibly a lesser extent, Will Folks and Fitz News. Both outlets have done a great job covering this, and it is new, but it has to do with the South Carolina House of Representatives and well, some of the promises that they wrote about and talked about back when they wanted to get elected, and what's happening now. So the GOP has a super majority, and I believe it's 88 or 89 members of the South Carolina House, excuse me, are GOP members. They have a super majority. That means that on a conservative platform, there should be absolutely no reason that conservative issues go right through. Should be no reason. Um, with a super majority, if you typically don't vote, whether it be conservative or if it was on the shoe was on the other foot for the Democratic Party, if you don't vote the way that you should. In other words, do you have office because you used the letter behind your name just to get the votes, which is done a lot, especially in Columbia? It comes out, and people are very attuned to that, and they see it very quickly. So, anyway, some of the cast of characters that we're going to talk about are going to be people like the Speaker Pro Tem Tommy Pope out of the Rock Hill, York area, and the South Carolina House GOP Majority Leader, which is Davey Hyatt. And Mr. Hyatt is out of Pickens County. So on the 10th of January, the GOP caucus got together. And what they were meeting off-site meaning not at the Capitol. And let's back up even more so. In the chambers, as soon as the House came back in session, it was told to the members of the GOP caucus that they were not going to be allowed to um, take pictures of the voting board, the tabulation board, which hopefully everybody's seen. That's where you can see where everybody's voting, and SCETV always takes a shot of that, so you know where your representative votes. Many representatives take selfies with it or take pictures of it and send to their constituents. Again, it's a form of transparency. You wouldn't be able to do that. And they also said you GOP members were not going to be allowed to vote. And I'm probably going to paraphrase this a bit. Vote for any GOP member, much less a different party, but any GOP member if they weren't an incumbent. Now that doesn't mean just in your district, which is a duh. But let's say your neighboring county and there was a GOP member who was incumbent, but you liked what Joe Blow, the GOP challenger, what he had to say, and you thought he could bring it to the table. You're not allowed to endorse that challenger. You have to endorse the incumbent. House Majority Leader Davey Hyatt said, you will need to sign an oath of loyalty to the SCGOP House Republican Caucus. Now, many of you right now are probably going, "What did you just say?" So for the Baptists in the back row, Davey Hyatt told the members, the GOP members, you're going to have to sign a loyalty oath, a pledge, an oath to the GOP House Caucus that you would not endorse, campaign for, support anyone other than an incumbent, the GOP incumbent. And I don't believe it's specific to the House. It's very, very broad, very wide open-ended. You also would not be able to take pictures, if you will, of data inside the House and send it out and share it with your constituents, meaning you can't show how everybody else is voting. Um, these rules, this is all part of the rules committee, and they have people that sit together and make up the rules of the House, and they're usually leaning a little to the left or a little to the right, just depends on who's in charge. And it's always been that way. That's no big deal. And things like as Corey had said, and some of the stuff I'm going to be talking about from his article and from Will Folks, is that you can't have flip flops on the floor, you can't wear shorts, no tank tops, things like that. Those are the lighthearted things. And there's more serious things, like they do have an oath of confidentiality, things that are to be kept confidential, and that's okay. There are some things that are. The caucus meetings specifically, not voting. Voting is always in the open, but caucus meetings where you're strategizing how your caucus will work, that is a confidential thing. They're not to share discussions in a strategy type atmosphere with the opposition, obviously, and not with media outlets and so forth. Those things are really a given. It's the lack of transparency and keeping things so secret, that and not being able to vote for who you want to vote or endorse who you want to endorse. You've got to pledge allegiance to the caucus. To make them do that, the strings are being pulled by Davey Hyatt and Tommy Pope on these Republican House members very hard. They will make it very, very uncomfortable for them in there. And it was reported that, and I believe it was 20, that seems to be the magic number this year, about 20 of the 88 said, we're not signing that. 20 said, we're not signing that. So they're pulling the strings. They start telling them, hey, we're going to do this. You're not going to be able to do that. You're not part of the GOP caucus. And they threatened to kick them out of the GOP caucus, like they did Jonathan Hill last year or the year before. So even this new set of rules, it's been labeled as the loyalty oath. And this is being talked about. The funny thing is, it's not being talked about by those who didn't sign the oath. As Corey mentioned and Will Folks mentioned, and I want to make sure they get the credit for this. I'm just reporting it. They get the credit for this. Um, the So they're pulling the strings on them. They're handcuffing them, telling them they're going to kick them out. 20 of them said, "Sorry, we don't want any part of this." Now all of a sudden, it's going to become personal. Um, One of the rules specifically states, and I'm going to quote it: "No member of the caucus shall engage in campaign activities of any kind against any other caucus member in good standing." And as we say, what really does that mean? When you get, take off the bologna, take off the cheese, wipe away the mayonnaise, what really does it mean? And that is the problem. It's too vague. It's way too vague. How can you agree to something that is that vague? Parts of the new rules are pinpoint on, but the majority of it is vague. And they use vagueness to their advantage. They use vagueness to their advantage, and it is the key point. Maybe not the number one, but it is a key point of the contentious attitude between the two. So there was a uh, Corey Allen had someone. He has some sources in Colombia, as do I, but he's got some really deep ones. He asked, what is the term campaign activities? And what we know is that would include a prohibition against members posting images of a House electronic voting board on their social media page and would prevent them from discussing the internal processes behind House votes during public appearances. As they say, it's basically and ultimately an incumbent protection system accompanied by a muzzle. We've talked about here on this show and in other shows, we've talked about the incumbent slash establishment. They don't want more members. They don't want your county party to grow. They don't want your precinct to grow because they've capitalized it. And more people means more votes, means they're less likely to capitalize. Well, how do you control? And I'm telling you, folks, that's happening here locally in your district, in your precinct, and it's happening at the state house because they've got Davy Hyde's been in there. I think it's like 14 years. Tommy Pope, I don't know how long. They've both been in office too long. 14 years, 4 years apiece, or 2 years apiece. Almost 30 years, 3 decades. He's been there. That there is power. There is power there. You have to understand that. That doesn't mean you control your power by putting a muzzle on your members. That is wrong. That is wrong. And as the Overton report says, that is the crux of the problem. In December, some of the House representatives in Columbia, there was a few that wanted to post a photo of the voting board, and they were immediately harassed about it. So I want to read you well, how does this work? So let's say, for example, and I appreciate the Overton report for providing this. Let's say a new bill on banning, let's just take abortions, for example, comes up after the recent South Carolina Supreme Court decision striking down the current one, and this is all real, down the current one signed into law by Governor McMaster last year. So let's then say 25 Republican caucus members vote against the new bill, which would stop abortion in South Carolina. Under the current caucus rule, As written, if a member of the caucus were to post the results of that vote on their social media pages, any platform, accompanied by a caption given to the effect of something like, I am disappointed in my colleagues shown on this board in red for voting against the right to life and against protecting unborn babies. That member would be potentially in violation of the rules of the caucus. They would be in violation of the rules of the caucus that Davy Hyde, Tommy Pope have orchestrated. Recently, Representative Adam Morgan from the upstate, he has a desk mate who happens to be his brother from another county. It is his birth brother, and he was saying how he's excited to share the desk with his brother. Had a picture of April Cromer, Representative Cromer, and he says, "I will try to post more pictures of public votes in order to inform the public of what we are doing and how we are voting." That will be in violation of the oath. Interesting. This is power protection of itself. So, what happens if an incumbent's challenger is holding an event or an event is being held for the challenger? Let's just say, for example, Joe Blow is in office and I hold an event for my neighbor who is Jim Smith. The Republican caucus member shows up, speaks on stage, and has photos taken. What happens when these photos come out and they're shared on social media and in any platform? That too would be disallowed. So now you have the public being critiqued by potentially, by the House leadership. The assessment Will Folk of Fitz News put out that basically it's an incumbent protection ultimatum, again, accompanied by a muzzle. As Corey says, I agree with, I have no problem with that because it is true. Now, we haven't got to the good part. The setup is there, but we haven't got to the good part. The part where I can't believe you just did this. That's still to come. We're building up to that. So those who did sign the oath, I am sure that they had reasons to do it. All of our representatives here in Beaufort County, as far as I know, and if it's different, then I haven't been given that. As far as I know, they all signed the oath. That's their business. I would not have signed it, but I am not there, so it doesn't matter. Um, those who didn't sign it, I believe they had good reasons. I happen to agree with them. And I don't think anybody on the other side should have any ill will, but they do, because this is another example of sit down, shut up, listen to what happens, and play along. This is another example. We've talked about this for over a year now. How many of these things are starting to line up as example after example after example? It's a ditto, ditto, ditto. Establishment, globalistic idea or politically charged isms to the establishment. So you could rewrite this rule, or you could leave it out altogether, which would be fine and still have a Republican supermajority. That will also reunify the party in the House and potentially eliminate a lot of the possibility of failed votes. Because this is also a masochistic-esque version of I have the bigger toys. The Republican Party has a supermajority that could go away. Those members, could they defect? Absolutely. Absolutely. What would I don't know that that's ever happened. What would happen? All of a sudden 20 of them say, I'm not a Republican anymore. I'm joining the independents. Okay? Now that would be 68 of the House is Republican, 20 are independents, whatever the remaining is, 60, what, 70, whatever, 50 are Democrat. Now, what happens then? Is it possible? I I think it's possible. But again, the question with all this kind of stuff is, well, who leaked this? Where did this come from? And it's become a like a war of words, folks, with he said, she said. But when you start peeling back the layers of this onion and you start to really see what's going on, you're going to be surprised who the leaker is. So GOP Chairman Mousy McKissick jumped himself into the fray, jumped himself right in there. He implied, and this is, you got to pay attention to this. He implied that those who refuse to sign the pledge or the oath or rules, and it depends on who you ask. Some won't call it an oath. Some call it a rules package. Some won't call it that. They'll call it a pledge. Some won't call it a pledge. Anyway, McKissick said those who refused to sign that, quote, were doing so because their intention was to tell Democrats what was being discussed in those private meetings. Drew McKissick, the state chair, if you refuse to sign this, it's because your intention was to tell the Democrats what is being discussed in those private meetings. He's either running a scam, is a sham, or he's got a backdoor scheme, or he just really is that plain stupid. It's got to be one of them. But he's not the leaker. He's not the leaker. He just he's talking through his ass and his mouth knows better. You can Google Kelly and Blaze in the morning from 94.3 in Charleston. Google his interview. You can hear just what I just told you, if you'd like. So the people in leadership were claiming, leadership of the House, were claiming up and down that those who refuse to sign, all of a sudden, they're the ones that are leaking the information. They're leaking all the data, all the information. It's coming from those 20. Well, like I said, Corey Allen of the Overton Report has people in Columbia that he talks with. I have some folks in Columbia that we talked with. And Corey and I have not talked about this. What he writes here is exactly what I was told. We contacted some sources. How's it going? How's fishing? How'd your Christmas go? Blah, blah, blah. Hey, I'd like to talk to you about this loyalty pledge or this oath. All of a sudden, the conversation is, oh, hey, man, I got to run. Or, oops, I think the stove is beeping. Or, I'd like to talk about it, but I can't. I don't want to intentionally violate confidentiality of the caucus meetings. All that we talked to said that. And you can tell when someone's giving you a line of bullshit and when somebody's like legit. These were legit. Like all of a sudden the mood changed. You can tell when somebody's smiling on the phone and when they're not. At least for me, these calls went from very upbeat, happy, da da da, to ooh, I gotta go. This story got picked up by Glenn Beck on the Blaze. He didn't dig as deep into it yet. I think he will, but some of his producers did. He even caught on to that. Wait a minute. If the people the 20 that this was happening to weren't the leak because they're scared or they're nervous or they're trying to do the right thing, who's left? It's the leadership. Just like we've seen other political parties do or other political minded people, they tell you that the grass is purple, the grass is purple, the grass is purple. And go around you and go, that asswipe thinks the grass is purple when we know it's green. You understand what I'm saying? That's exactly what we believe the leadership is doing. They're saying, "Oh, these leakers got to come from this 20. They're crazy. They're wacko. They're off the chain. That's part of that bunch. But that bunch isn't telling everybody. They're nervous about what's going on. So all of a sudden, we get to January 10th. And if you have any questions, put them in the chat bar in your social media, and we'll bring them up on screen. So January 10th comes around, and there is a Republican caucus lunch deal at the infamous Palmetto Club. It's a place in Columbia. It's very high end. It's old, but it's very high end clubhouse restaurant. I've had the opportunity to go there when I was on council, with eat dinner with some state people, and people go there. Honestly, you go there to be seen and to see. That's really it. Like the Capitol Club in D.C., it's a who's who in the Republican Party, and you go there, and coffee is $12 a cup, but you get to sit next to Kevin McCarthy for 10 minutes, whatever. That's the same thing here. So January 10th, Davey Hyatt, the Republican caucus, which he's the head of, the majority leader, rents this room for this large luncheon meeting, 88 people that you would think. So members of the caucus started coming in. Out of the blue, something happened. House Majority Leader Davey Hyatt comes to the door. Behind Davey Hyatt are people from the Sergeant at Arms office and security blocking the door. Davey Hyatt, according to at least a dozen to a dozen and a half folks who were present but did not give their names or did not give their permission to have their name used, said that Republican was blocked by Mr. Hyatt and some guards. It quickly became clear that because the 20, didn't sign the pledge, they were not allowed into the meeting. They traded barbs. The facts still stayed the same. The people, as it's put in this article, the people that didn't sign, who are trying to get in while their colleagues are walking by, hello, they're going in. As the article says, they feel like lepers. They're being treated like lepers. In the end of it, there was 4 or 5 of those 20 that were allowed to go into the luncheon. And I think Oramus from Aiken was one of them. And they were allowed to make the case, so to speak, for the rest of the 20 who were still outside and weren't allowed to come in. They had their conversation. And here, as the article says, is where it really gets weird. Now, folks, you need to know that in any, except at the county level, but any political corporate structure, when you have a caucus, there are dues to be paid. It's a couple hundred, $200-300 a year. If you're a Republican or a Democrat, to belong to that party's caucus. That money goes to Lord only knows what. But we're not on that story. It is what it is. A couple hundred, $200-300. Whether it's in South Carolina, New York, wherever, they all do the same thing. They have caucus dues. It's usually pretty small. And to these guys, a couple $100, it's not a big deal. But there is another way, and that is, and I don't know if all states do this, but some do, lifetime membership. The South Carolina House of Representatives in the State House has a lifetime fee of $5,000 to the caucus, and you get a lifetime membership. That means if you serve one term or 50 terms, one term you paid that $5,000 prior to being unelected, you're still granted the privilege of attending Republican caucus meetings and being part of the Republican caucus, which in and of itself is extremely wrong, but be that as it may, what if the person signed, or what if the person who paid that $5,000, they're a lifetime member, right? But they refused to sign the pledge. What if Hyatt gave the option of becoming a lifetime member to those who did not sign the pledge? Other sources in Colombia claim that the majority leader, Davy Hyatt, and other members of leadership, which would include Tommy Pope, Speaker Pro Tem, and everybody else who, the few that make up Republican leadership. But the majority leader, Davy Hyatt, offered the option of a $5,000 payment in lieu of signing the oath. That's the whole point of this show. Think about that. There's 20 of your friends outside, and there's 60 of you inside. They want to join you, but they don't agree with everything you talk about. So the person in charge says, "You give me $5,000, I'll let you in." That is enormously wrong. I think that's called extortion, maybe. That is huge. That is monumental how wrong that is. So the person who was elected in 1980 or 1998 for one term paid that lifetime membership fee because they were, I don't know, related to Leatherman and had money hand over fist. They're allowed to attend caucus meetings without signing the rules while 1998, while the current elected members of the House in the GOP aren't being allowed in the caucus meetings for not signing the same oath or rule. Yes or no? Obviously, the answer is yes. It does mean that. Well, what about, does this mean for those members who did not sign the pledge but it paid the $5,000 fee? Are they allowed to attend caucus meetings? Yes. And that, folks, is apparently exactly what happened. They were being extorted, allegedly, potentially, to spend $5,000, get out of jail free card, and we'll let you in the club. Does this mean that the members who refuse to sign the pledge are being offered the option of paying a lifetime fee of $5,000 in lieu of signing the pledge? Well, that is exactly, I'm going to repeat it again. That is exactly the option that was presented and discussed. And if that's the case, is that a problem? Yeah, that's, you hear what I got to say, but that's up to you. You're the voter. That's up to you to decide, is that a problem? Is this pay to play? I don't know how you could answer no, because you are paying to be in the club. You pay me $5,000, Davy Hyde says, and you can be in the Republican caucus. Because you don't like what we have to say, you got to pay $5,000 and you'll be in the caucus, or sign the pledge. There are movies made where somebody's captured and they're a captive in war, and the other side, the Russians are saying, tell us where your nuclear bombs are. Well, the guy won't do it. Sign this, that you are an American spy, and we'll let you go. Where is a lot of the difference? You hold true to what's your morals and what's true, and you stand to it. These folks, these 20, were standing true to their beliefs, but Davy Hyatt said, "You know what? If you pay $5,000, we'll let you in the club." Interesting story. Um, Looking over at the Fitz News article, and I'm a subscriber to Fitz News. I recommend you do it. He's got his own take on things. Even Will Folks, the editor, tried to get commentary from GOP members of this 20. and they didn't want to. He has a quote from State Representative Bill Taylor, who I believe is out of Augusta or Aiken. Will Folks was at the club, the Palmetto Club, on the 10th. Bill Taylor was leaving. Asked him, how was it? How did it go? Quote, it was a wonderful and harmonious meeting. Tongue firmly implanted in cheek, said Representative Bill Taylor. No other lawmaker would comment to Will Folks of Fitz News what transpired behind the club's closed doors. Do you really think that any of those 20 are the leakers? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's the leadership of the State House, GOP caucus, running a pay-to-play organization. State Representative Adam Morgan was contacted later by Fitz News, and he said, unfortunately, due to a confidentiality rule, I can't tell you. Wish I could. Would love for the people to know. He was one of the 20. How much more honest can it be? The allies of Adam Morgan, such as Oramus and Taylor, the 20, they're concerned about really two pieces of it. And that is the campaign incumbency, the muzzle, and this inability to keep people at home informed as to what's going on. Unbelievable. There are articles on fitznews.com. And you can go to the Overton Report on Substack and read that one. They're also on the Facebook feeds for them both. And I haven't, yes, Twitter too, I believe. Yeah. So anyway, it's not done. It's not done at all. Unfortunately, South Carolina is known as, and it's true, the most liberal state, GOP state in the South. This is the most liberal Southern GOP run state in the South. I venture to say in the country. If you took all of the 50 that had and pull out those that are GOP, majority, the most liberal, I'd be hard pressed to find one more liberal than South Carolina. That has been well recorded over the years with our budgets, with everything the state government has been doing. And that trickles down. That trickles right down to the towns and the counties all across this state. We'll keep you informed as to what goes on with this as time moves forward. Let's go over here and do a check real fast. Again, if you had anything you wanted to ask about this, please go ahead.
Introducing to you.
You're on House of Cards, live on Facebook and YouTube.
It's going down.
Locked and loaded with the truth.
And we are powered by United Digital Promotions. Thanks to those folks. So one other thing we want to talk about here recently, or two things actually. The other day, I believe it was Thursday, over in Beaufort at actually Ladies Island at the Crystal Lake Park, there was going to be a meeting. It's a public meeting, and it had to do with the land. We'll paraphrase it as the land swap. And what that is, there was some parcels of land that had been designated rural and critical for, I know it's some ball fields, and I want to say a library, but I'm not 100% positive, but ball fields in a library, I believe. And to use those public lands, they were going to give some other land in lieu of it. So the public came out enormously for this, because right off the bat, the first thing, here we go again. This smells really bad. rural and critical lands takes money that is appropriated by either by county council or they approve the sale of bonds to 20 million, 25 million, whatever. This latest thing is 100 million to buy land that is rural and critical to the environment and to the environment of this area. They purchase it and get it out of the ability to be mass, houses built on or shopping centers or whatever. They also buy conservation easements and other easements to protect land. If you got a piece of land where there's a part of the Civil War was on, you want to protect that. We just saw it over on St. Helena. So anyway, they're having a meeting in Ladies Island about a land swap for Bluffton proper, Okatee. That is just really smelly. But moreover, they're wanting to take land that was purchased with money that you approved. You said do it. All right, they did it. Now they want to swap it. How this is not illegal, I don't know, but obviously it's not. Greenway and the rest of the bureaucrats in the county obviously found a way to do it. Fortunately, the public came out in droves to say absolutely not. And I applaud that because if the citizen says, "Here is my dollar, put it in the pot and save that piece of land along the Okatee River." They do that, it's case closed. They turn it into a passive park. They turn it into nothing. It remains beautiful. That's the way it's supposed to stay. The county, and I'm not clamoring in on the rural and critical lands. This is about the county. The county is quick to say, well, once we buy, I can remember coming to us saying, well, if you approve this, we can, in perpetuity, this land will be forevermore taken off. And we think this is a good idea and blah, blah, blah. And 9 times out of 10, the answer is yes. It's never been presented to county council. Well, we want to buy it now and protect it now. And then maybe later we could flip it out for something, if you want something there, we'll give you this. That's not how this works. That's not how this works. And for the county administrator to attempt to do it tells me a lot. And any of the up the pipeline it goes tells me a lot. That should never have been even broached. Hopefully that is a dead issue, but I know it goes to county council. They have the final say. If they vote this in, you really got the fix going on. This is no way this should be approved. And I'm reaching out to county council members, my own district, and everywhere across this county. Do not get in the business of taking land that was bought for one reason and turning around and trading it for another piece of property so you can put a ball field or a hospital or anything. That's not what we approved. Don't do it. Now, if you feel the same way, contact your council person. You can go on BeaufortCounty.gov, search for county council, and their pictures are on there. You know what district you're in. Call them up, email them, whatever you got to do. Find them on Facebook, find them on Twitter. They all should be responsive to you. You're their boss. Let them know how you feel. So the last thing I wanted to mention still has to do with county council. And I mentioned this the other night during the regular show, but I got really wound up about it. The more I thought about it, and I started doing some digging, and I wanted to bring it up again. And I left my notes. That's all right. So county council, I believe it was on the 3rd, give or take. That's when they were all sworn in and seated. Even though it was already known, and I only know this because I was a part of it before, it was already known who the committee people would be and who would head up what. That's selected a long time before that. The that process took place shortly thereafter. So, as I had said, when you are elected to county council, and those who are already there, every year or so they redo these committees. You're asked, hey, what committee strikes your fancy? And the names of those committees here in Beaufort County prior to this year, because now they want to change the names and combine some for efficiency, which I call bull crap. That's total baloney. Anyway, it was public facilities, which has to do with roads and engineering, things like that, stormwater. Community services, which has to do with like the jail, the sheriff's department, or fire and rescue, and all that kind of stuff. Parks and Rec is under community services. Natural resources, which is land, zoning, building, that kind of stuff. Very, very important. And finance, which is what it is, really the bread and butter of all those committees. Everything's got to go through finance. Finance committee is what sets the budget for the county. So the new members, I'm sure, were given the opportunity to say what their what their likes were and what their dislikes were, or what have you. And as a steward of the county, the chairman and vice chairman should have sat down and looked at all of the members to see exactly what their background is. What is their background? Well, I'm glad you asked. So, starting over in Beaufort, David Bartholomew, he's a lawyer. Let's see, Gerald Dawson. Gerald Dawson, I don't know. I want to say he was a preacher, but I can't really swear to that. But I believe he was a preacher. York Glover has been involved with farming, with natural resources, with the university, such as Clemson, in the extension office, wealth of knowledge like that. Alice Howard. Alice Howard's career at the end was as a civil servant to the Marine Corps up in the air station. Joe Passelman um, is a retired business person. Really kind of fuzzy what he did, really, but business, corporate business. Tab Tabernick, she's a retired teacher. I believe she said she was a professor. So she was in the education field. Let's see. Mark Lawson. Mark Lawson was working for a restoration, like wind and hail and fire damage company. Now I understand he works for a home builder. Let's see. Paula Brown. Paula Brown retired from finance, the finance industry, worldwide finance. I'm talking about the World Bank, Invesco. I mean, all that kind of stuff. She was involved in finances. Larry McClellan is a retired. He was a DEA. I don't know if he was an agent or a DEA executive. Got out of that game and became a magistrate judge and eventually the chief magistrate here in Beaufort County. And Tom Reitz. Tommy is involved in corporate business. And I believe I named them all. I hope I got them all. Anyway, that's the structure of who is on county council. Now, I told you what the committees were. My issue, Logan Cunningham. Golly, how could I forget that? Logan Cunningham was a public school teacher. He left the public school system and is a manager of I believe still a manager of a restaurant and sports facility. Okay, that's all of them. So I've got a issue with two of them. One of them, the first one, is and they've changed the names of them mostly, but I'm going to call it the community services because that's really what it means. The chairman is Logan Cunningham. Now, I don't have a problem with him being chairman because he should be. He's earned his time. The rest of the committee is all new folks, all new folks. There may be one that's not, but I mean, all of them are on this committee. Now, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is these committees should have an even flow of uh, knowing where the bones are. Okay, you need to know where the skeletons are buried. You need to know what happened. You need that carnal knowledge or that tribal knowledge to be able to get the whole picture. All right, it's the whole picture that you're looking for. So for the chairman to set a committee up, um, all new folks who have no knowledge other than what they've learned or learning about the skeletons, that's putting the chairman, Logan Cunningham, that's setting him up to fail, in my opinion. I wonder why. Why would you do that? Or is that intentional? Did you ever think about that? Are you not worried about the skeletons? Or are you so worried about the skeletons you don't want them to be found? I don't know. My other problem, which is the biggest problem, is finance. And I mentioned this last Thursday. I'm going to mention it again. So, Finance Committee, some could say, some should say, some will say that it is the most important committee because it sets the budget for the county for the following fiscal year. All departments, everything comes through the Finance Committee. And I happen to agree with that. Some folks would say it could be something else, and that's cool. That's cool. But anyway, last year, Mark Lawson was made the chairman, which I totally don't understand. But needless to say, he was, and apparently everything went okay. Um, as long as they weren't strong armed by staff, then whatever. But let's talk about the here and now. The committee was set, and I would have put a paycheck almost on this. That Paula Brown would have been on that committee, bar none, should have been the vice chair to help Mark Lawson because of her career in finance. I mean, you got somebody who has sat down with World Bank. Beaufort County doesn't have that. Someone who sat down with Invesco and world investors and talking about quantitative math. Do you know what quantitative math is? Mark Lawson, do you know what quantitative math is? Chairman Passman, do you know? She does. But she's not on the committee. That makes absolutely 0 sense. 0 sense. You've got somebody who excels in that. And, and I'm not speaking for her, I'm speaking for me. I don't think she has a bone in her body that wants to take it over. I don't believe that. I've never heard that, and I don't believe that. But she's got the knowledge to carry her through. When I was on county council, public facilities came to me because of my background in business and heating and air conditioning. When there were questions about that or plumbing or electrical or building, because my knowledge was in that. They never came to me and asked about potholes because you fill it up. I don't know how do you fix a pothole. It's using your resources properly. But Chairman Passman doesn't do that. So, again, I'm a little perplexed why she's not on the committee. But stay tuned and watch that. We'll see what happens. We will be back next Thursday. We're going to line up our guest hopefully tomorrow, and we're going to get back on the subject of human trafficking and child trafficking and sex trafficking in Beaufort County. That story is going to be, we're going to hopefully going to have a live person here in studio or on screen with us, rather. Someone who knows the ins and outs of that concern. And we want people in Beaufort County to know this is a problem. This is a defined problem. And if you have politicians, and they would be the only ones that would do this, but if you have any politicians say to you, it's not a problem here. Don't worry about it. That's a Savannah problem or that's a Charleston problem. I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, it is a huge problem here. And we need to get involved as a community to stop human trafficking, child trafficking, and the sex trafficking business. We need to stop that. All right. So we'll be back here on Thursday night. Until then, have a good rest of the weekend. And we love you, America.